Right, welcome along. It is Irregular Periods Month, and I am speaking with Andrea Marsh. Andrea, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, hello. I'm Andrea Marsh from Cotswold Menopause, and just a bit of background. So actually, I'm a shiatsu practitioner and Chinese medicine. So my whole viewpoint to help you alleviate your symptoms naturally is through understanding how the patterns and the energies of the body link back together in Chinese medicine.
Cool. So, irregular periods, it's one of those ones that in perimenopause we all have the joy of.
Yeah.
They get longer and shorter and heavier and lighter and closer together and further apart. What's your experience been?
Well, that was my life, really. Always really heavy, quite irregular, and really, really painful. And ever since I started quite late, and just a misery, really. I used to have to plan my life around my periods. Once I remember being in London, I think I was in my 30s, and this is what associates to stress. I was in a hotel room and I couldn't leave the hotel room to go to the client that day in the middle of a project because I just couldn't leave. So, you know why, all that kind of stuff. And pain was really bad. So, yeah, I've had a life of it and I just couldn't wait for my periods to finish. And they still haven't. And bizarrely, at 49, I have more even, more regular periods than ever before. And so now they don't bother me so much. I mean, I still, chart the time of the month it's going to happen. But it's probably only about 10% of the pain, the stress, the mess that it used to be.
Wow, that's such a positive thing to hear, isn't it? Because for so many of us, they seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. So it's lovely to know that they can get better and better as well,
Yeah, and there's a definite phase in the perimenopause, and in its earlier on, I see it from my experience with my clients. It's earlier on in the perimenopause, so maybe mid-40s, where some women are just flooding and horrendously more so than even I did. So I can only appreciate that. But I was speaking to a lady the other day saying she was going through like 2 layers in less than an hour. So it really is. And I've read up a lot about this because it is one of those symptoms of, though I managed it myself, excuse me, I know it wasn't as bad as what a lot of women are experiencing. So the flooding stage seems to be, I think, an earlier perimenopause symptom. Whereas as you get closer to the menopause, so, closer to the age of 50, 51, which is the UK average of the cessation of periods, what you should be seeing is a pattern of them becoming irregular, but also becoming scant. So they're getting lighter and they're getting intermittent, and you're starting to see spacing of 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And that's when and I'm not at that. What I'm at now is absolutely bang on 28 days regular periods, which I hadn't had in my life. And we'll go into why that is in a minute. So yes, you've definitely, and every woman is different. I mean, gosh, the stories about fibroids, about endometriosis. There's one thing that can really go wrong in the functionality of the body, it seems to be anything to do with the womb and, our hormone cycle. And so as they get more scant and more intermittent, the only thing you're really looking out for there is you never know when it's going to happen. So I just say to all my clients, especially if they've been for a shiatsu, because the shiatsu can almost trigger a final bleed because it triggers a clear out. If you can hear ripping cardboard, that's my dog. So yeah, it does catch you out, but it is a sure sign when the period's getting lighter and erratic. It's a sure sign you're close to the menopause. But if you've got erratic but heavy, getting closer together, getting longer, this is an earlier perimenopausal symptom in my experience.
My experience is exactly the same. One of my early things of not yet knowing I was in perimenopause was suddenly having these 3-week-long bleeds and heavy and frankly horrible, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And since we went into lockdown last year, they've gone like clockwork.
Yeah. What do you think the link is there?
I think part of it certainly is a massive lack of external rushing around and stress and all those things. Yes, life in lockdown has been stressful in a different way, but I think my body has been able to slow down, and it's gone, thanks, that's quite nice actually.
And I would say that's happened for a lot of ladies too. And that is the link. It's the stress of life, the stress of us running around, the stress of too much or too wrong type of physical exercise, all of these things playing to the stress in our body. I used to be able to almost delay my periods, not consciously, but because I was in such a stressful career, I was like, I haven't got time for a period. So I didn't have it. And then as soon as I was over the deadline, because I was always in go lives in media, so there was no shifting deadlines. Deadlines had to happen, even if that deadline was like at 2 o'clock in the morning, it had to happen. So it's almost like on some level, I was stopping my body having the periods because of the stress. But also there's other associated symptoms, you know, the gain of the belly fat, the visceral fat around the vital organs, that comes in, and that is definitely induced by stress as well. Painful breasts, which are swollen, where this lovely term in Chinese medicine, stagnation, where basically you've got fluids that are filling the breast tissue but not leaving the breast tissue, and that's building up into and of course excess estrogens, and not even good estrogen. From the food chain we're getting lots of chemical estrogens, and those are the ones we don't want in our body, and the ones that are stuck in our body, stuck in breast tissue, stuck in the liver, stuck, you know, creating the belly fat, all of these things. And they all build up to a pattern of hormone imbalance. And hormone imbalance is also greatly affected by nutrition. And by nutrition, I'm talking about the vitamins and minerals that you don't necessarily know you're lacking at this time of life. And funnily enough, again, it's a catch-22 situation. When you're stressed and you're releasing too much cortisol, cortisol uses up that any additional nutrition in your body. So you might have just been getting by. You might have been stressed all through your 30s, but you thought it was positive stress and it was great. But now you're getting into hormones slightly wreaking havoc, and cortisol is grabbing extra nutrition. So it's taking it from where your body was getting it. So suddenly achy joints, fatigue, periods getting heavy, because I think I need to double check. I have all these things in reference books, not in my head, but I think zinc is a very pivotal it's a mineral, isn't it? In the, I'm sorry, it's the cardboard chomping that's going on. I'm sorry, ladies. It's right under my feet. So if the cortisol and the stress is extracting and utilizing vital nutrients like zinc, and zinc is a big player in the regulating the heaviness of your periods. You can see how these things all start to come together. It's quite complex in one way, but as I said right back at the start, you know, for, you know, all through my teens, 20s, 30s and early 40s, my periods were all over the place, and now I'm just about to knock on 50 and my periods are calm. So what is the difference? Two things. One, I did remove a massive stress from my life, which was leave my career and become a therapist. But on the other hand, that actually created all its own stresses. And my perimenopause really came to light, actually, in those years I was setting up my business and fretting about where money was coming from. So it's not as though I left computers, became a therapist and everything like went zen, not at all. And periods got worse, everything got worse, basically. Stress got worse. Fatigue, all the ones that we see with the ladies on the group going, please help, my GP says I'm depressed, all of these things. Emily, you've been there, and I was there about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was November, and I was thinking, my memory, I've lost my memory, I don't feel like myself, I'm crying at everything, I don't get excited, my moods are low and flat, and you go, if I went to a GP, they would tell me to tick a form and tell me I was depressed and offer me antidepressants. But I didn't feel depressed. You know, I was in my ideal job. I was doing what I wanted to do. I was my own person, but just wasn't myself anymore. and I was having the heavy period scenario as well. And so thank heavens I was at a networking meeting and I heard about menopause and I heard these symptoms and alarm bells rang and I was like, oh my gosh. Went home, Googled the symptoms in the menopause and was like, oh my God. I was thinking I was just 45 and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't think I could be menopausal at 45, but actually, thank heavens, the relief I felt. And I felt that relief at working out I must be on this path to the menopause, because I don't think the word perimenopause existed 5 years ago, really. Yeah, because of who I am and what I do, and because Emily loves this, there's hot symptoms and there's cold symptoms. And to me, it was all a mess. It was a total mess. I was like, I don't have a hot flash. I just don't have any of the menopausal symptoms, but I've got the anxiety, the fatigue, the low moods, heavy periods, feeling cold flashes, all of those things. So I was like, I'm having a cold menopause. Is there such a thing? So using my Chinese medicine, that's the path I set on to sort all this out. And yeah, and it really has. And you might be listening to this going, yeah, but how did you sort it out? And knowledge is a massive part of it, as you know, Emily understands. But actually, it was understanding and finding out about that I was so nutrient deficient that all my symptoms were actually like my body screaming at me something was wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for so many of us, that we unknowingly let the stress and the external stuff build up, because as you say, that's just how we
just don't know, that's just life.
We just get on with it, don't we? And we charge through our 30s chasing the career or chasing the family or chasing whatever it is that each of us wants to chase, and we don't even think about stress. We know that, like, when we feel really stressed, we know that that's a bad thing and we probably ought to address it, but we don't. I think a lot of us don't realize that there's so many other things that are adding to that stress.
It's an internal stress that we don't know exists. I do now. I'm trying to educate women about that now. We tend to talk about it as adrenal fatigue a lot, but we don't understand that the hormonal change in our body, it's like 100 times more powerful than being pregnant. So that hormonal change itself is a stress that's going on in the body before you even add life to it.
Absolutely. And this is something I talk about quite a lot, and is the sort of I split stress into two different types. There's kind of big stress and background stress. So big stress is moving house, it's going through a divorce, it's in a job where really every day you're stressed. Background stress is all the rest of it. It's remembering to get the shopping done. It's potentially skipping, accidentally missing a bill payment. It's feeling like your time is being required by too many people. It's not quite knowing when to say no. It's not quite having boundaries in place. It might be running around after small kids. It might be looking after elderly parents. It's all those things that are constant, and you can't just walk away from them. You can't just turn around and go, yeah, well, whatevs. But what you can do is reset your own boundaries, and as you say, address your nutrients and actually put yourself first.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. They always say all the big stresses in life are, then you've got this layer of background stress, and then actually let's highlight physiological stress. And the physiological stress is your body is evolving. Hate to use the word, I like aging, but by aging I mean it's chronography, isn't it? We're going through life. You are aging, and chronography of life means you're going to hit the time of hormonal change, which the menopause is technically one day, and you don't really know when that is. It's you look back and go, have not had periods for a year or two, so okay, I'm postmenopausal. The big issue, and the one that I feel like GPs and everybody else should be addressing, is the perimenopause. It is the hormonal upheaval up until the time that the periods stop. That doesn't mean symptoms stop the day the periods stop, because funnily enough, I now see or hear from a lot of women in their mid-50s who go, but I went through the menopause, but now I've got menopause symptoms. And actually, again, it's that actual physiological stress and plus the background stress. So it can hit some women a lot later than other women. But right now we're seeing this surge of it hitting women in their 40s, and it might even get a little bit younger. You might get down to early 40s and late 30s. And for any ladies that had children in late 30s, early 40s, that's another physiological stress. So women post baby birth go, am I perimenopausal, or is this, am I depressed after having my baby? What's going on? I'm not bouncing back like the other two babies. I see that one quite a lot. No, because of your age. That's can't get away from it. It's an age-related thing, and I think a lot of us, you know, we dye our hair, we do everything so we don't look like we're aging, but our bodies are still doing what nature intended them to do.
Yeah, and the irregular periods are one of those things we can't just dye out of the way or stick a plaster over. If we want to address them, we have to really dig in deep and address, or accept them. And you know, accepting them is fine as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the stage I got to, that you know, apart from the odd spike of, like I said, I couldn't leave the hotel room one year. Oh, not 1 year, one day. It wasn't
hotel room.
Just me. Yeah, that was a long time to stay there. That was a huge bill for the company. So I didn't question it. I just thought, this is just who I am. So it didn't bother me. I just worked around it. It's now sitting here at 49 when I wanted my periods to be done and dusted, and now they're regular as clockwork and not a fraction of the pain. You go, well, why is that? What is different? And you have to look at, you know, I've done the research, so I know what's different. And all I can say, ladies, is you don't get enough nutrients from food. I mean, I eat a ton of fresh food. I eat a ton of nuts and things, but it wasn't until I started taking magnesium that I noticed changes. So, and it's not just one nutrient. I see quite a lot ladies say, oh, what should I take? Don't just take the magnesium. It's multivitamins. It's just as simple as that for some ladies. Because a multivitamin is just putting back in a basic amount of everything you need, and then we start adding to that. You always need a magnesium alongside multivitamins, but you might be, if you're having excessively heavy periods, then you probably need more zinc in your diet, and I think vitamin C is another good one. There's a few that they say take high doses of. There are some herbs that can help with irregular periods or heavy periods, and they're not something I recommend because I'm not a herbalist, but there's a good probiotic out there that actually has a little bit of these in, and in taking this probiotic, maybe that has also fed into how my periods have got better. But I think what I just say to anybody is, all the information is out there. I know it's spread everywhere, so that's why we have the experts in this group, and you know, and there'll be some experts that know more about some things than others. So ask them, go to them, get their free guides, because we've all got this information, but it's so vast, and it's also, for each woman it's slightly different. I mean, there's general, but then it gets more specific. So when asked, we can answer the questions, but putting a lot of this just information out there every day is really difficult for us to do. And we're also doing, you know, everything else, like treating clients and consulting and things. So see a lot of women that need help, but you've got to ask for help, really.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you, Andrea.
Oh, you're welcome.